And we are live with April 2025 Security Plus Study Group. This is our pre-show. Hello, everyone. Hello, chat room. Hello, everybody joining us. We are 10 minutes away from getting started. This is the part of the live stream where I make sure everything is working. And hopefully that's the case. Our cameras are looking good. Recordings are going. I've already done the podcast intro, so you don't have to sit through that with me. I've already spared you all of the Q&A. So now we will get this pretty much ready to go. I've been adjusting and poking and editing, and we've spent a lot of time in the studio lately. So we are still working on a lot of different aspects of the configuration here. It's a constant change. It's sort of like owning a boat. There's constant updates. It's like being at a hospital or an airport. There's always some type of construction going on somewhere. And so that's what we're doing here. There's constant construction going on. Right now, we're not really touching very much with the config. We have finished shooting most of what we needed for our newer A+ course. So I don't want to change things right in the middle of what we're doing there. But as soon as that's done, I have a few more. Of course, I have a few more things I want to do. Of course I do. There's always something new to change and poke and get, and new technology and new pieces and new parts. So we're working across all of that. So far, though, everything's working well today. Our data rates are great. We're sending about 6 megabits per second over to YouTube. YouTube crunches that and sends it down to you. So as long as this is working fine for me, you're responsible for making sure that it works fine to YouTube, which there's not much to it, is there? You just connect and hopefully everything works fine. We'll make everything happen. The next part of what we're going to do is at the top of the hour. In the first hour is our Q&A. It's sort of a live Q&A. I didn't close one of the doors that I have here that create a little echo. So I'm going to go do that. While you are watching, I will be right back. I'm going to walk away. I would bet that you probably wouldn't even hear that on the live stream just because of the way I have the mic set up and the room set up. But I hear it. So it bothers me. I can't concentrate. Must have the right audio setup. Right now, we're doing pretty well with audio. We're getting there. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. People are checking in from all over the place. If you would like to put your pin on our virtual pin cushion, that's the pin cushion that you see in front of me right here. That pin cushion is available at the same link that we're going to use for all of our Q&A today, which is professormesser.com/QA right here behind me. This is also the link that we use throughout the day or for the next couple of hours. So in this first hour, I will ask you questions that come from the exam objectives, and then you have to answer, and that's the link you use to answer. And then in the second hour, you get to ask me questions, and that's the same link that you would use to submit your questions, which you can do at any time. So if there is a question you want us to cover in the after show, we will consider that request by simply visiting the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. And I think it must be working because people are in there. They are clicking through. We got people connecting from all over the place. We, of course, have our friends in the northern part of Greenland, which no human being is at. So it's good to have you there. Malk must be here because I see things happening down past the leewards. So we've got some activity. There's Malk. Hey, Malk, good to see you. Nice to have you here. I was looking at all of those islands recently. There's such amazing places to vacation down on the Leeward Island area. That whole chain of islands right there is remarkable. It's just beautiful down there. So I was thinking of you as I was looking through my Google map and looking at websites. It was remarkable. So folks checking in from all over the place. We got folks in India. We got folks checking in from Romania, New York, South Carolina. The folks, this is got a lot going on. Florida's here. Hey, Sarasota. North Dakota's checking in. Clearwater is here as well. Clearwater. We've got folks checking in. A lot of Florida folks. Good to have you here. There's my Canadians. Ottawa's checking in. Folks in Ottawa are here. Thanks for being here. Idaho, Kentucky, Nepal, Houston, Michigan, Ghana's checking in. All over the place. Check out that chat room. It's just flying by. See everybody checking in. Thank you so much for being here. We have a lot to go through in this first hour. Of course, all brand new questions coming up. And I'll be glad to go through whatever questions you have in the second hour. Just submit those at any time using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Oh, this has been a good month. I think in the last week, I must have put out about 30 videos on YouTube. So it's all the A+ updates. This really has nothing to do with the Security Plus study group, but there's just a lot happening right now, spending a lot of time in this chair. So it's always nice to have that content that you've been working on for months and months and months and months, and you've not seen a thing, and then all these videos suddenly hit. So it's so nice to have that. It's been such a good week to see that activity happen. Got folks checking in from Jersey. This would be the new version of Jersey here in the U.S. We've got Alabama and Somalia and Malaysia and Texas and London and Miami. I was just in Miami yesterday. Day before yesterday. I was in Miami. Went there for a day or two. Used to live in Miami, so we go back there from time to time. We've also got folks checking in from all over. More Canada checking in from Winnipeg. We got Baltimore, Maryland, my Maryland. Salt Lake City's here. A lot of folks checking in. Thank you for being here. This is so nice to have you here. It's nice for you to carve out a little bit of time to spend with us. We will see what's going on. Yeah, it's quite the setup here. It looks more impressive than I think it really is, but that's okay. Looking impressive is certainly fine. A lot of these aren't even turned on most of the time. This is my streaming screen. It's a 27-inch screen, which really doesn't need to be 27 inches, but I wanted to get the same screen as the video switching system because if there is a problem, we can swap those out. That's why I got them that large. So it worked out okay. Yeah, the cables are well managed in this desk. You can't really see it, but all the cabling comes off the floor and is behind here along the back. I have two different tracks, one for the data, one for the power. There was quite a bit of thought put into this. Now, it's not perfect. It still needs, every once in a while, I put something in and it doesn't look right, and I have to get another cable, and it has to be a little bit longer or has to be a little bit shorter. Those are the normal things, though. But it works fantastic. This whole thing has been picked up and moved a number of times. In its current form, though, everything is in the desk, which is not what we had previously. In our previous studio, I did have, these 19-inch racks on the left and right side, but I had some equipment that was in a separate, I called it my data center. It was a closet that I'd set up a 19-inch rack, a full-size 19-inch rack in this closet. It was a walk-in closet, so it was plenty of room. I even had more storage in there. It was a great setup. But now everything is just shrunk down. Everything is so small. And so it's now easy to have everything in one place. The audio systems are smaller. The lighting is smaller. You don't see the lights here, but there are a couple of LED lights. You can kind of see the reflection off of the back of my hand there. There are some LED lights right in front of me that are now just fitting on they're on the desk. They're mounted to the desk. So everything's on the desk, nothing hanging from the ceiling, which is where things used to be in our older studio. So it's really been great. We got about 30 seconds before we get started. Just a little inside baseball for the folks that were commenting to have that there. But normally it's this screen. The laptop's not even turned on most of the time. It's kind of boring. 2 monitors and that's it. And an iPad, and that's sort of it. The iPad only use occasionally when we are here. Let's see if we can, while we are here, see if we can get things started. We've got the video switching system is working. We're hitting the top of the hour. That means that I need to get my act together. Look, there I am. It is 12 noon. That means it's time for live stream, everybody. Let's bring up our keynote. Let's look for a green light. We should get a green light. There it is. That means our laptop is going to click over. That means that it is time to do this right here. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2025 Professor Messer SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. We get to see how well you might know some of this Q&A that we will talk about today. If you are joining us live, first, thank you for being here. We love it when you join us live. If you ever want to know when the next live stream is, you can always visit us over on our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. Also want to let you know that you can, if you are here live, participate interactively. You can answer these questions by yourself, or you can vote online for the questions that we have. And if you would like to do that, you can pop open a new browser window and head over to the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Our only standing rules with this, if you are here live, is to please answer the questions by following the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer questions, and I have for you, just to see if all of this is working, what we call our rewind question. This is a question from a previous study group to see how well you might have remembered this information. This question asks, an internet provider is required to replace faulty equipment within 4 hours of an outage. Where would these requirements be documented? Would they be in a EULA, NDA, SLA, EOL, or BPA? All of these are abbreviations we should know from our Security Plus exam objectives. Remember, if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the one that's right here, and you'll be able to submit that question at any time. We will come back to this question in just a moment. Let's first talk about what we're doing here. This is our live stream. We do one of these study groups every month for each of our courses. This is our fourth one of the month. This one specifically on the SY0-701 Security Plus. But of course, we have times when we are doing other things here as well. We're not doing live streams all the time. And if you'd like to find out what we're up to, you might want to check us out on social media, professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/Twitter or /X, and professormesser.com/Instagram, professormesser.com/YouTube. Well, we did YouTube. How about LinkedIn? LinkedIn is there. Facebook is there. So if you're looking for us on social media, you'll probably be able to find us very, very easily using one of those links. Today, we're going to talk about questions that come directly from the SY0-701 Security Plus exam objectives. This is the current version of the Security Plus exam. It was released on November the 7th of 2023, and we estimate that it will retire somewhere around May of 2027. So as we sit here in 2025, you've got plenty of time, which means you are studying for the right version if you are here watching us before that retirement date of May 2027. To earn your Security Plus certification, you have to pass a single exam. That exam is 90 minutes in length. Then the clock stops, and whatever scores there is what you get. It's a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions on your exam. And the passing score you're shooting for is on a scale from 100 to 900. The number you want is a 750. Now, if you are familiar with the previous version of this exam, the 601 version, obviously is a version that's no longer offered any longer, but it is exactly the same format. So if you are familiar already with the format and the style of the exam, although the objectives have changed, the way the objectives are asked of you is exactly the same between all of them. So if you're familiar with the style of the 601, then you're already familiar with the style of the 701. We've got a lot on our website. Of course, our entire 701 course is available for you to watch for free. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's nothing hidden behind. Everything is out and available. You can watch this entire course and take your exam and earn your certification. But we also have other materials that might help you with your studies. You can have a look at those in our Success Bundle at professormesser.com/701SB for Success Bundle. We have course notes, practice exams, downloadable videos, downloadable audio, and a lot more. You can check that out on our website, professormesser.com/701SB. The replay of this live stream will be available immediately after we're done. And when we are finished with this, you'll see that the video is something that you can watch on the YouTube on our channel. But I also create an audio-only replay of this. So if you want a podcast version that you can listen to in your car or when you're working out or when you're walking down the street, you can simply add that by going to professormesser.com/podcast. We also, if you are on a streaming audio service like Spotify, you can just simply look for Professor Messer, and all of our podcast audio is always there. You can listen in at any time on demand in any of those places. About a day after we have finished this live stream, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will suddenly have a large group of timestamps that somehow magically appear. Well, it's not magic at all. It's my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this replay. Hi, Lori, probably at 2x speed, and putting in all of the timestamps of exactly what we are doing during this 2-hour session. So feel free to have a look at those. That might help you find exactly what you're looking for and find it very, very quickly. And as always, thank you, Lori, for doing that. Chat room, if you like that, make sure you give Lori a hello in the chat room as well, since she is watching this on the replay chat as it goes by. Also let you know that we are not here doing a live stream all the time. We are very often over on our Discord, almost always. You can find us there at professormesser.com/Discord, where we have people talking about their A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications. Thousands of people are there, a fantastic community of people that are happy to help. Sometimes you'll even find information that you didn't even know existed. You have so many smart people over there on that Discord. Feel free to join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your Security Plus exam. And if you are in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, we can give you a discounted voucher to be able to take this exam. This discount that's available is at professormesser.com/vouchers, so you can pay a little bit less than full price. Of course, you're welcome to go out to the CompTIA website and pay the full price, but I'm not sure why you would when all of these discounts are already available on our site with no additional features, functions. You don't have to put any coupon codes in. You don't have to do anything special to earn the discount. It's just simply discounted by default. But you also get something a little extra if you purchase a voucher on our site. You get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I wrote that lists out all the tips and tricks that I use to study for a CompTIA exam and tips and tricks that I use during the exam itself to optimize my score. And if you're looking for a couple of extra points on your exam, this might be something that can help you. All of this is available when you buy a voucher on my site at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now go back to that question I asked earlier, which is, an internet provider is required to replace faulty equipment within 4 hours of an outage. Which of these requirements, where would these requirements be documented? Would it be in the EULA, the NDA, the SLA, the EOL, or the BPA? There are a lot of abbreviations, all real things, by the way. But let's see what you answered for this one. I'm going to close this particular poll, and we're going to see how we did. 83% of you say the answer is SLA. We also have no double digits in this. Everything else is single digits from there. You have 6% that said EULA, 5% that said BPA, 4% that said NDA, and 2% that say EOL. So you've got a lot of other abbreviations like an end-user license agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, an end-of-life document, or a business partnership agreement. But in this case, the only one that matches where you would find these requirements is the service level agreement. Service level agreements are commonly made with service providers that you have for network connectivity, providing services for security tools and security coverage. You might even be working with one of the large security providers to provide you with additional equipment if your equipment fails. That is built into a contract when you start this business arrangement. So if you are in the case of you're buying some equipment or you're setting up a service agreement with a third party, make sure you check the service level agreement so you know exactly what will be expected of you if you happen to get into some type of scenario where you need some help. What's in the contract? What is expected of that service level provider? They will be able to give you an idea of what might help. And in this case, practically everyone got this one. 83% of you got that one right. Service level agreement is the right answer. You did fantastically well with our first question. So now let's try to make these questions a little bit more difficult. Let's now have a question that's a different kind of question. For those of you not familiar with the CompTIA exams, when you sit down and take these exams, the first questions that you get on your exam, the first handful of questions you get, will not be multiple choice questions. So the question we just did was a multiple choice. There was a question and there were multiple answers to choose from. You could have guessed if you didn't know the answer, and you had a 20% chance of getting it right. On your exam, there are usually four different answers to choose from, which means it increases to 25% chance of getting it right. But in this particular case, CompTIA would like to really test you to see if you really know the information that is contained in the CompTIA exam objectives. So they want to give you some questions where you can't guess. I guess on some of these you could sort of guess. This one we do today is sort of a guessing game, but not quite the same percentages. So let's see how we do with this question that CompTIA likes to call a performance-based question. This is a question that is not multiple choice. It could be fill in the blank. It could be performing a function in a command line. It could be drag and drop. You might be pulling things down from a menu. There are a lot of different ways, but the questions themselves are all based on the official exam objectives, which means if you know the exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will be able to answer it because you already know the content that they are looking for in this question. So I have for you today a performance-based question dealing with topics associated with control types. And I have for you on the screen a control type example chart. Now on the left side, the Y side of this, we have different categories. I have technical, managerial, operational, and physical. And across the right side, across these rows, we have deterrent and detective. So the only two control types that we are really interested in this particular question are the deterrent control types, or control types that you could categorize as a deterrent, and control types that you could categorize as detective. And although it's true, if you've already gone through my control type video, you know that an individual security control is not exclusive to a single control type. I have, of course, really worked on getting the idea of this, having you focus on one particular type that could only fit in one of these boxes. So I did make this a little bit easier for you, that there are only 8 different options, and you're only going to fit these into one of these different slots. So we have deterrent detective for technical, managerial, operational, and physical, and the 8 different options that you should drag and drop into these, or I guess virtually drag it and drop it into these categories, are motion detectors, system logs, splash screen, reception desk, demotion, property patrols, review login reports, and warning signs. Those are the 8 different controls. Those are the security controls, and I want you to drop them into the security control categories for these different types of control types. So we've got technical, managerial, operational, and physical. Of those, which are deterrent, which one of these are detective? So we have a few of these listed in this mix. All of these should be something that you should be familiar with. These are obviously, all 8 of these security controls are well known to all of you. Everyone knows what a motion detector is, what system logs are, what a splash screen is, what a reception desk is, and so on. So I want you to fit those into those different examples for the different categories for both deterrent control types and detective control types. Hopefully this is one. And if you'll notice, that's a fill in the blank on your side. So just tell me for A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, what the word is that you would put there, or an abbreviation of the security control that you would put into that example. If you would like to submit your answer, please don't submit it into the chat room. Instead, follow the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll have to see how well you do with these. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these control types. This is the very first control type that is listed in the exam objectives. So this will be a one certainly that you would need to be familiar with when you are working through your Security Plus exam objectives. So it's very, very early on to be able to work through that. So hopefully these are familiar to you at least. And if they're not familiar to you, it's at the very beginning of your studies. So if you haven't gotten into Security Plus yet, and you're still working on learning the material, you may find that this is a very early question that you are going to work through. To be able to answer this question, please visit the link, professormesser.com/QA. Some of you have said it hasn't flipped over yet. Maybe you should refresh your screen. It will probably show the right answer. If you do that, it should automatically update on your screen, but I realize everybody's using a different browser. There's always an idiosyncrasy somewhere with the different browser views of this. Let's, now that you've gone into this question, and some of you are answering these questions already. I see a number of you that are working on inputting these answers as we go. So let's see how you did with this one. I'm going to give you an idea of what these might be. So let's step through them one at a time, and let's see if it matches what you think would fit for that particular control type. Have to be one that you could work through. Next, let's start with this one then. We'll have our chart, and we'll build out our chart with those control types. Of course, we're looking for both deterrent and detective. And let's start with the technical category for both of these. Which one of these would we say is a technical security control that fits into the category of a deterrent, a technical deterrent in this case? So let's see if what I would put into that particular view is a splash screen. A splash screen is a message that pops up on your screen, usually when you're logging in. So it's something that has a little message before you put in your username and password. It usually says, this is a secure environment. This is not a place where you can hack into this. If you do gain unauthorized access, we will take you to court. You have been warned. We will use whatever legal means to prosecute. You'll get all kinds of little messages in there, just so that it's very clear that you're not allowed. Of course, it is of course always clear that you're not allowed to hack into someone's system, but legally it helps to have additional disclaimers on the screen, just to be sure that nobody can be fooled of thinking, oh, was I not supposed to hack into your system? I wasn't aware of that, which for some reason is something of a legal argument. So we took care of that argument by adding a splash screen to deter someone from hacking into a system. Next on our list is the detective control type for the technical category. One way to detect a type of security issue is with system logs. System logs are often used to detect a security issue. We often use these logs. We run through them, we parse them, we create reports based on the information that's in these logs, and we use them as an ongoing method of monitoring what's happening in our current environment. It is, of course, after the fact, but it is something that we can use and create very technical breakdowns of what's happening on the network over a particular time frame by analyzing these system logs. Next on our list, we're going to move to the next category of control type, the managerial category. This is a type of category that uses a management of a particular area to determine what security tool we would use for this. So a deterrent that is a managerial category deterrent is something like a demotion. A demotion is certainly motivating. We'll say, well, if you happen to do something on this network that is not allowed, we will demote you. That's certainly a managerial policy. It's not something that's technical. It's not built into the logic of your security controls. You won't find a demotion button inside of your next generation firewall or inside of your IPS features. You're not going to find a demotion button on your reverse proxy. Demotion is something clearly a management or policy that you would be associated with that. Next on our list is the detective control type that's associated with that managerial category. And for that one, I would say reviewing login reports. Having to create the reports is one thing, but you have to look at the reports to be able to provide any type of direction. And there may be a policy that says you have to go through these login reports every day, every hour, every week, whatever it happens to be, to see if we are looking at something unusual in these reports and maybe focus on solving a problem that we find. Maybe we see a huge uptick in authentication errors. Well, that would be an interesting piece of information. Where's it coming from? Is it from a single IP address? Is it from multiple IP addresses? Is it happening at a particular time of the day? Does it happen all the time throughout the day? This is information you would only know if you were able to review those login reports. Next on our list, let's move to the next category of an operational category. Operational categories for the deterrent control type. And the type of security control that I would put into that mix is a reception desk. The operational category is usually a category associated with humans being able to perform a function. And having a reception desk can deter people from gaining access to a physical location. If you have to stop and you have to sign in, or you have to have somebody ask you, who are you and where are you going, you may not be so apt to try to circumvent that particular security in an environment or simply walk in the door. They're going to stop you. So they are definitely a deterrent to keeping things secure. Next is the detective control type for the operational category. And in that category, I'd put property patrols. Property patrols would be patrols where a human is walking around a perimeter or an area of a facility and making sure that everything is looking the way it should, that there's been no type of physical security breach, that nothing is out of place, that no doors are unlocked. Again, those operational controls very often are humans that are providing that function. So that is how we would categorize a deterrent and detective control type for the operational category. And next and last category on our list is the physical category. This might be one that's a little bit easier to know, since the physical name simply demonstrates that these are things that are physically in the world. We can often touch these, or at least point to them and say, here's a physical security control. If we're trying to deter people with a physical security control, that'll be something like a warning sign. Do not enter. Cast members only, please. You may employees only. No access, no unauthorized access past this point. So warning signs can be very useful in trying to make people aware of where places are that they can go and places are that they cannot go. And next on our list is last on our list is the detective control type. A physical detection of security would be things like a motion detector. Motion detectors are often used in security to see if something is happening when we don't happen to be watching. So anytime something moves, the alarm goes off, or a message appears, or you are informed that something is moving in an area where something normally would not move. And that could certainly point to a security issue. So those are the control types, the 8 control types, the drag and drop, if you will, on where you would put those. In the technical category, the deterrent is a splash screen. The detective is a system log. Under the managerial category, a demotion is a deterrent, and reviewing the login reports would be a detective control type. Under the operational category, a deterrent control type would be a reception desk, and the property patrols would be a detective control type. Under the physical category, warning signs would be a deterrent, and motion detectors would be detective. Now, those are only 2 of the many different categories that you need to know on these different control types. And one thing that I mentioned in the video, and I think sometimes people mistake this particular aspect of it, is these security controls are not exclusive to a single control type. So you can have different security controls show up in different categories of different control types. They're not specific to a single box that's on the screen. These security controls can be used in many different ways and therefore might fit many different categories. So keep that in mind as well. Many people think it's a one-to-one relationship. It is not. It's a one-to-many. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're working through everything associated with these different types of security controls and the things you would do with them. So hopefully you're now familiar with some of the aspects of these control types and what you would do with them. Hopefully you did pretty well on these. Let's now move to a different question. Now that we've done our performance-based question of the month, let's move back to doing a multiple choice question. The multiple choice question I have for you is this one. It asks, a company would like to block users from visiting high-risk websites. Which of the following would be the best security control for this task? Would it be splash screens, MFA, log analysis, monthly patching, or DNS filtering? Now, if you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. See if you know what the right answer would be for this one. The question again asks, a company would like to block users from visiting high-risk websites. Which of the following would be the best security control for this task? Would it be splash screens, MFA, log analysis, monthly patching, or DNS filtering? One of these is the best security control, and that's one of the things you'll often run into on these exams, is often there will be answers in here that you could use. There may be multiple answers that could be used to provide security for this task, but the question is asking which would be the best security control for this task. In fact, if I look at this list, I can see of the 5 different options that are here, 3 of them could technically be used for this particular task. So already in your mind, for extra credit, for instance, see if you can pick out which 3 I'm thinking of and see if that makes sense for you. If you think you know the answer, answer at professormesser.com/QA. Please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. We'll find out what the answer is right now. The question again asks, a company would like to block users from visiting high-risk websites. Which of the following would be the best security control for this task? Would it be splash screens, MFA, log analysis, monthly patching, or DNS filtering? Let's find out what you answered. I will close the poll, and we will see in this list that 92% of you think the answer is DNS filtering. That's a pretty strong answer for this one, because 8% said splash screens, 1% said MFA, 0% said log analysis, and 0% said monthly patching. But one of those 0% is one that I said could technically be correct. Isn't that interesting? So of all 5 of these, it looks like most of you think DNS filtering is the right answer. But really, there are 2 other possible answers here that could provide at least some level of, I don't know if blocking is the right word. The question clearly is asking for blocking, but certainly notification that somebody is visiting high-risk websites. Well, with 92% of you saying DNS filtering, I'd have to go with that as well. I think in the 5 different options that we have here, DNS filtering is the best option here, because we can use your DNS in conjunction with real-time threat analysis to be able to determine what websites do we know about that are bad websites. And is anybody trying to visit one of these bad websites? Very often you may find that malware, for example, is trying to visit a particular domain. If you can simply block that domain in your DNS, you can effectively cause that malware, although it has infected your machine, it can't cause any problems because it can't communicate out to the mothership. So having that DNS filter in place is incredibly useful. The DNS is simply going to give usually gives a black hole DNS type entry. That is where we would configure our security related DNS, that if any of these particular harmful websites are found with a DNS request, send them back an IP address of something that's local in our data center that we're going to simply monitor. And if you find that someone is now visiting that IP address in your firewall logs, you know that machine is infected with malware, because they were able to get an IP address from your DNS that points to nowhere, but now you see the malware trying to connect to that IP address. It's a way that you can keep the malware working and then use the malware to effectively identify itself so you know exactly who is infected. Another common, easy to configure DNS configuration on many next generation firewalls, something that might help. So that is certainly the answer we were looking for. But as I mentioned, there were two other options here that could potentially be used to either identify or potentially block users from visiting high-risk websites on this list. The first one that I would choose is the one that 8% of you chose, came in second on this list, a splash screen. A splash screen is obviously a notification that says you're about to visit a bad website. Click this button to go to a different site or click continue. We often see this when we get a bad certificate in our browser that our browser says, well, I guess you could go to that site if you really wanted to, but we'd rather you go somewhere else. And you get that option that you get to choose. That splash screen can be very useful. Does it technically, physically, or technologically block the high-risk website, though? It just puts a screen up that makes you as the human decide whether this is something you should block or not. You get to decide which direction you go. So in many ways, splash screens could be a very good example there, but again, not the one we were looking for. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, that's what that stands for. We don't usually authenticate into websites unless there is a reason to log in. When we first visit a website, you usually don't need any type of authentication. You go to Google, you don't have to log in. If you go to YouTube, you don't have to log in. If you go to a newspaper website, you don't have to log in to at least see the first page. So multi-factor authentication would not be blocking users from visiting websites, high risk or otherwise. Log analysis would be a way that you could potentially block users from visiting high risk websites, but it would be obviously after the fact. We would see someone visit that site, we'd see it pop up in the log, and then we would set a rule in the firewall to block any subsequent visits to that particular site. Not usually something that would be very useful, and it certainly isn't after the fact. We don't use this at all. If we're interested in blocking high-risk websites, it's almost always going to be some type of secure DNS, some type of built-in URL filtering inside a next-gen firewall, or something of that sort. And then monthly patching doesn't help you a bit when it comes to visiting high-risk websites, unless perhaps you're getting a monthly update of known bad sites. But these days, these known bad sites come along so quickly, getting a monthly update isn't going to help you very much. In this case, the answer very clear. Most of you chose it. 92% of you said the answer is DNS filtering, and that is exactly what the answer is. Let's now shift gears to a different question. See how well we do with this one. The question asks, a technician works directly with the data associated with a corporate application to assign rights and implement security controls. Which of the following best describes this individual? Are they a data owner, data processor, data custodian, data modeler, or data controller? We have to know our data, apparently. A technician works directly with the data associated with a corporate application to assign rights and implement security controls. Which of the following best describes this individual? Is that a data owner, data processor, data custodian, data modeler, or data controller? If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to use that link on your screen to input your answer. Not getting quite the number of answers so quickly on this one. We have to think about this one and stop Googling. No more Googling. No. Do not Google. You should instead pretend that you are at the exam itself. We want to be able to make this particular link one or this particular question one where you are deciding what the answer is, not something else deciding what the answer is. That's how it's going to be in your exam anyway. There's no Google in your exam. You don't get any phone a friend options when you're taking the exam. So this is another one of those situations. See how well you happen to know what this happens to be. This should be pretty good. And even worse, some of you are saying, oh, you don't use Google, you use AI, which has less than a 70% accuracy rating. So even a worse option would be to use AI. You're definitely going to fail if you go that direction. So don't do that one either. At least go with one that is something that you can discern whether it's right or not, instead of something that is ridiculously wrong constantly. That's just choosing the right tools for the job in that particular case. There's great reasons to use AI. If you need a weird picture, it's a great thing to use. To study for an IT certification exam, bad idea. Not going to help you very much. Might be good to use. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a technician works directly with the data associated with the corporate application to assign access rights and implement security controls. Which of the following best describes this individual? Is it a data owner, a data processor, data custodian, a data modeler, or a data controller? We'll stop right now and see what your options are. We're a little torn on this one. Not getting in 92% on this one. 43% of you say the answer is a data controller. 33% of you, though, say the answer is a data custodian. And then 12% say it's a data owner. Then it drops to single digits. We have 9% say data processor, and then we have 3% of you that say data modeler. So at least we have a little bit of options on here to think about. We are getting into understanding the options, but I guess it might be good to go through what some of these roles might be for understanding people that work with data. If you're someone who is managing how data is processed, you're managing the reason you would be processing all of this information, you're thinking about how this data would be used, you are a data controller. If you're someone who's actually doing the processing, the data controller says, it's important that we are able to process this data. Please do it. Here's why we're processing the data. But then we have to have somebody to actually do the processing. And that is the data processor. That's the person who's processing the data. This is often a different group in the organization. Usually it's the IT folks or the data folks that are handling this process. It's something that can be very useful. A good example of this relationship between a data controller and a data processor will be things like a payroll department that is needing to process payroll every month. So the payroll department knows exactly who's hired by the company. They know how much money they're supposed to get on their paycheck. They know how much the taxes are that are supposed to come out. They know how much bonus dollars are being added into that mix. We've got different options there, but they're not the ones that are actually doing the processing. They're not the ones that go through the process of putting the checks together or having the transactions go out to the banks. Most companies hire a third-party payroll company to actually do the processing of that data. So the responsibility for determining how the data is processed is the data controller, and the people that are actually doing the hard work of taking that direction and doing this with the data is the data processor. That certainly gives us a couple of options there. The challenge, though, is we need someone to make sure that we've collected the right data, that we have data that is protected, that we keep certain private data private, we allow public data to be public. So we need to have someone that is a custodian of the data. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as the steward of the data. This is the person who is responsible for making sure everything we put into this database is accurate. Everything that should be private is private. Everything that is secure is secure. And if we need to apply any type of rules or regulations to the data, it is usually the data custodian or the data steward that is able to do that. And they're going to make sure that they are putting sensitivity labels on the data. They're making sure that people have the right access rights and not more access rights than they really need. This is someone who definitely is responsible for security as it is associated with this data. The data custodian or data steward would be the person responsible for assigning access rights and implementing those security controls. And 33% of you said the answer was data custodian, and you got that one absolutely correct. That is the answer that we were looking for. Data custodian is the one that would assign access rights and implement security controls. 43% of you said it would be the data controller. The data controller very often is not the one setting individual security controls or signing access rights. Very often, the data controller doesn't even know how to do any of those things or really have much of a concern. They might set a direction and say that the only people who should really have access to this data are people in the accounting department, and they might work with the data custodian to determine what groups have access to this data and how much access do they have. And they might set up different levels of access based on who you are. Somebody who's simply an accountant may have a certain level of access. Someone in payroll might have a different level of access. And the manager of all of those folks may have even more access. And that would certainly be managed by the data controller to be able to take that input from the custodian and put it into action. So in this case, the answer we were looking for was indeed the data custodian. That's who assigns access rights. Who implements the security controls. Your data custodian does the hard work in this particular case. Make sure you are familiar with all of those differences as we go through these videos. I think this is one that might really help you when you get into the world of understanding how we work with data, who's responsible for what types of data. And that, of course, is an important aspect of this exam. You'll find out more information on that in our video 5.1, Data Roles and Responsibilities. If you have looked through this information already, you can tell there is a lot of details on this exam. We've already only talked about a few different topics. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics on this exam. And of course, our videos cover every single one of those topics that CompTIA has provided to us. I've also taken all of this information, since it covers 121 videos. The Security Plus exam is a big one. There are over 15 hours of videos available to be able to work through all of this. But of course, you may be in a position where you just don't have time to go through 121 videos and be able to work through it. So I've taken all of the text from every video, all of the important graphics, all of the important diagrams that I've created in all of these, and I've created a set of course notes. These notes are, of course, not to replace the videos, but to give you something that you can use afterwards to be able to understand what the different options might be. So if we were to look at, and now, of course, I'm not able to access my controls, my video controls, forget data controls, I don't even have a video control to be able to choose from. So let's show you what the course notes look like. Here's what they look like. This is the set of PDF course notes. I have course notes that are on my machine that are the PDF versions. There's our control types, for example, the CIA triad, information about creating a digital signature and verifying it, authorization models, and all of the other text, graphics, and important information from all of my videos. They are all in these course notes. Not only do we have the digital version, we also have a physical book version of this. If you get the physical version, the physical edition, we not only ship you the physical book, but you also get access to the PDF for no additional cost. That might be something you're interested in. Certainly is something you might want to look at. You can find out more about this on our website at professormesser.com/701cn. There's also a number of different other study tools out there on our website you might want to look at. This could certainly help you when you're in your final type of studies. You've gone through all the videos, you've read your book. Now you need a summary of everything. That is exactly what you would use this course notes for. Find out more on our website, professormesser.com/701cn. Well, let's see if we can bounce back after that last question. The next question on our list asks, which of the following techniques would be the best way to prevent the use of rainbow tables during a brute force attack? Would that be hashing, just-in-time permissions, snapshots, chain of custody, or salting? Which of the following techniques would be the best way to prevent the use of rainbow tables during a brute force attack? Is that hashing, just-in-time permissions, snapshots, chain of custody, or salting? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Seeing a lot more people submitting their answers on this one. So maybe we know this one a little bit better of the things that we are using. Hopefully, this is a topic you're familiar with. Obviously, all 5 of these are in the exam objectives, so you need to know what all 5 of these are. but it's certainly something you might want to be familiar with as you are going through all of these. Now, if you don't know what any of this is, well, maybe we just instead we make a guess. That might be the best way to approach the problem when we can't seem to figure out what the answer is. If you don't understand the question, then you are definitely going to have a problem getting through the answer of this. If you do know the answer or you'd like to take that guess, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in what you believe the answer must be. It's always good to take a guess. Another good thing on your exam, don't leave it blank. Always take a guess. As far as we know, you are not penalized for taking a guess. And if you happen to get it right, you get points. So it doesn't hurt you to take the guess. Always take the guess. Always put something in as an option. Never, never, never leave the question blank. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, which of the following techniques would be the best way to prevent the use of rainbow tables during a brute force attack? Is that hashing, just-in-time permissions, snapshots, chain of custody, or salting? We'll close our poll and see what you think the answer is. 75%, that's a pretty good showing, say the answer is salting. But on our last one, the plurality of you got the answer incorrect. In this case, that's a pretty strong majority, though, which leads me to believe that maybe we did pretty good in that case. 15% of you, though, said the answer is hashing. So we have at least 2 double-digit answers to go through. 7% said just-in-time permissions. 2% say chain of custody. And 0% said snapshots. That 0% always makes me sad. So I think somebody, it's too late now. You can't submit an answer. You can't make me happy now. Forget it. We can't work through this. This question, though, is really focusing on rainbow tables. Certainly brute force attacks are something we need to worry about. It's always a concern that somebody is going to get their hands on our password file and be able offline to go through all of those hashes and find everyone's password. And certainly it's possible to do that, even when you add additional obfuscation to the hashing process itself. A little bit more than obfuscation, isn't it? Hashing is one way to create a digest of that particular password. But one of the other things that you can do is to make it so that there's an additional bit of randomness thrown into the password. We refer to that randomness as salting. That is random data that we add to the password when we are hashing it. That way, if somebody happened to have exactly the same password as you, maybe in your organization, everybody's using Ninja as the password. You got plenty of things to look through. Well, if you were salting this and it was with a salt that was unique to the individual, all of those password hashes would be very different, which would make the process that much slower for anyone trying to reverse engineer. And because we create rainbow tables as a lookup table that is done well in advance, if something is salted, the rainbow table is worthless. You can't use that to look up anything. So that is something that can be extremely useful when you are going through this process of making your passwords and storing your passwords in a way that is very, very, very secure. Make sure that you are familiar with all of those techniques, because this is a great way to slow down the hacker by adding additional randomness. And we refer to that randomness as salt. Salting the hash. Have a salted hash is what we should be storing. If you find that someone is simply storing hashes, that is a painfully insecure way to store a password. You want to have a password stored in a more randomized way. If you're storing a password these days, it should always be with salt. There should always be a salted hash at a minimum to be able to protect those passwords. And that would be where 75% of you chose salting. That is the answer that we were looking for. That's the one that gives you the right answer in this list. So if you are someone who is working through and dealing with password storage and how to make sure that it is secure as possible, this is your starting point to have a salted hash in that view. 15% said hashing. And as I've already mentioned, hashing is just not secure enough. We need more randomization. And certainly if we were trying to prevent the use of a rainbow table, we can't simply hash. A rainbow table is a lookup table that's designed to simply identify the password if you know what the hash happens to be. So this is why, if you want to slow down the bad guys. You want to slow down the attackers. You want more than just hashing. You need to salt the hashes. When you're salting, it implies that you are adding it to these hashes. 7% said just-in-time permissions, and in this case, permissions have nothing to do with rainbow table lookups, so that's not going to help us at all. Chain of custody, an important security type of concern, but not something you would use during a brute force attack, and nothing that would prevent the use of rainbow tables. And snapshots is a very common way to create an instant backup, usually of virtualized systems, but a snapshot is also not going to prevent the use of rainbow tables. The only one that does is the one that 75% of you chose. It would be salting. That's the answer that we were looking for. If you are watching this video for Continuing Education Unit Credit, or CEUs, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for 1 hour of a CEU, in this case, a webinar category CEU, and you can use that CEU and apply it towards your renewal of your Security Plus, your Network Plus, your A Plus, or perhaps other third-party certifications as well. To earn the CEU, you must follow these instructions. The directions are: first, go to the Professor Messer website, and on the top or the bottom of the website, click the Contact Us link. Contact Us will bring up a form. Put in your name, your email address, and in the subject line, please put April 2025 Security Plus. In the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, hashing salting. Hashing salting are our super secret code words of the month. Just 2 this month, hashing salting. That's what we're looking for. And then you can send that message to me. It usually takes me about a week to go through these, and then send you back an email that certifies that you were here for a 1 hour webinar category CEU. Again, to be able to earn that CEU, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us. On the form that comes up, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put April 2025 Security Plus. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, hashing and salting. And if you'd like to put anything else in that message to me, I read through every single one of these. Although I'm not able to respond back to all of them, I do absolutely read what you are sending. Thank you so much for adding. I like to see what people are doing, where they are in their certification studies, why they need a CEU. I get such great stories, and it's also very motivating to me. So thank you so much for helping me out as well at the same time that you're earning a CEU. Let's do some more questions, shall we? I have another one in our list. Another Security Plus question. This next Security Plus question asks, an attacker has modified a Windows executable to load a malicious library. Which of the following best describes this attack? Is this SQL injection, race condition, DLL injection, supply chain attack, or cross-site scripting? A few options available there. The question again asks, an attacker has modified a Windows executable to load a malicious library. Which of the following best describes this attack? Is it SQL injection, race condition, DLL injection, supply chain attack, or cross-site scripting? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you know what this one is. A lot of people locking in their answer quickly on this one too. Wondering if we're going to do really, really well on this, or if we're all choosing the wrong one. Sometimes that happens to me, is I know the answer. It's that one, or oh wait, that wasn't it. Even though I was absolutely sure that was what the answer was. Maybe that would be a good one to look at. You're trying to work your way through all of these questions. There might be something you know, some things maybe you don't know. This is the time to figure out what you know really well and the things you may not know really well. That's why we have these study groups. So hopefully you're right in that sweet spot of knowing most of these answers. But if you're relatively new to these topics, some of these might be a little bit more difficult to parse out. Let's see how you did with parsing out this one. The question asks, an attacker has modified a Windows executable to load a malicious library. Which of the following best describes this attack? Is it SQL injection, race condition, DLL injection, supply chain attack, or cross-site scripting? 68% is a pretty strong percentage saying the answer is a DLL injection. But 18% is also a very strong percentage, almost 20% of you, that said the answer is a SQL injection. We have 7% that said cross-site scripting, 4% said supply chain attack, and 2% say race condition. Well, if you are getting into a place where an attacker is modifying an executable and finding ways to get their malicious code inside of your existing Windows executable, one common way to do this is through dynamic link library injection. This is a Windows function because in Windows we use these dynamic link libraries or DLLs, which is a way that you can have an application query a common function, perform that function, and then respond back with the answer of what that function provides. So if you are able somehow to get that information into an executable and have it report back the wrong information, that can be very, very, very useful to the attacker. So dynamic link libraries are especially prone to this because they're not commonly part of the executable running in memory until they're referenced. So very often the attackers will put a path in there. Let's see if I have, although I'm writing over the information that's on the screen, you can sort of figure out what's happening. They put a path to the malicious DLL that as it's going through the executable, instead of going to the proper DLL, goes off to the one that is malicious or has already been poisoned. And then you get a response back and it's loaded up into the executable. And now they're able to use that malware in the executable itself. That is dynamic link library injection. 68% of you chose that option. That is the one that you would use. Now, 18% of you said a SQL injection. This is when somebody is going around the authentication or authorization of a particular application and accessing a database directly using the web front end of the app. That obviously is something that should not be happening. So SQL injections, of course, are pretty severe because it gives people such access to the data, but it is not how a Windows executable would load a malicious library. SQL injections are almost always done in the front end of an application. So this is not where the attackers would be able to add their own malicious software or own malicious library. It's accessing data that exists in an existing database. 7% of you said cross-site scripting. That is certainly a very common attack type. Very often it is involving some type of JavaScript or modifying a browser, very commonly a browser-based attack, and using that to be able to gain access to a third-party website. That's why we refer to it as a cross-site attack. And then that obviously would not be a Windows executable on a single person's machine. 4% of you said a supply chain attack. Supply chains are certainly a concern. Whenever we're getting a new switch from a manufacturer, is it really coming from a manufacturer or does it have malware built into it? When we download software to install, is this really the right software from this manufacturer, or did an attacker gain access to the software and put their own malware inside of it? That would be something very similar to a supply chain attack. Be exactly a supply chain attack. And then 2% of you said a race condition. That is when two things happen at the same time. You don't have control over those two things, and you're making decisions in your application based on one thing happening and not realizing the other thing is also happening. Race conditions can be especially bad. Normally, they just break a system. They could also be used to gain access, but it doesn't have anything to do with Windows executables loading a malicious library. In this case, the answer is the only answer we would choose in this case is a DLL injection, the dynamic link library injection, and that is absolutely correct. Let's now, I have some time. We're at the top of the hour, but I think we can squeeze another question, at least two more questions in, right? Let's do another one. I think we'll just go and do this next question on the list. This next one is a question that asks, a company would like to implement platform diversity. Which of the following would best describe this implementation? Would it be use cloud data centers in different countries? Use a load balancer to connect identical servers? Install Linux and Windows web servers? Create an active firewall configuration? Or build a set of processes to follow when the network is unavailable. All of these things we have to know, obviously, for our Security Plus exam, but only one of them best fits the question that asks, a company would like to implement platform diversity. Which of the following would best describe this implementation? Use cloud data centers in different countries. Use a load balancer to connect identical servers. Install Linux and Windows web servers. Create an active firewall configuration. And build a set of processes to follow when the network is unavailable. If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what the answer to this one might be. I write all of these questions usually the week prior to the study group, but every study group is a different set of questions, and they're all questions that are brand new that I write specifically for these study groups. They're not designed necessarily to emulate the complexities of the questions that you would get on the actual exam, but they do absolutely cover the same topics. And this is a study group. We're studying these topics to see how well we can understand what these happen to be. So these are designed to sort of lead you into the understanding of these technologies, because understanding them is going to help you solve the more difficult questions that could possibly appear in your exam. Although I will tell you, sometimes the questions we do in our study groups are very similar to the questions you might get on your exam. Let's see how well you did with this one. The question asks, a company would like to implement platform diversity. Which of the following would best describe this implementation? Is it use cloud data centers in different countries, use a load balancer to connect identical servers, install Linux and Windows web servers, create an active firewall configuration, or build a set of processes to follow when the network is unavailable? What did you choose? Can't wait to see. About 70% or so say the answer is to install Linux and Windows web servers. 15% though say use cloud data centers in different countries, and 13% said use a load balancer to connect identical servers. So from a double-digit perspective, we have three possible answers to go with. In fact, it really drops off right after that, because 3% of you say build a set of processes to follow when the network is unavailable, and again, 0% of you say the answer is to create an active firewall configuration. So this is, whenever we start getting into these questions, we start breaking down what the answers could possibly be. This question really focuses on platform diversity. And this is an important consideration if you are someone who is in the world of security. You know that you're spending a lot of time every month looking at the monthly Windows patch update and patching all of your Windows servers. Or you're looking at the CVEs coming through for Linux, and you're patching Linux applications and Linux kernels. This is something that is always a concern of breaking these things apart. And that's why with platform diversity, we understand that every operating system has issues, but each of those operating systems have a different set of issues. We can't avoid the security issues associated with Windows. We can't avoid the security issues specific to Linux. We know that we're going to get updates every day, every week, every month that will cause us to patch these systems. But we know because they are different attacks and different vulnerabilities that are found for these operating systems, that we know that if there's a Windows problem that needs to be patched, that usually is not the same problem in Linux. It's usually not the same problem in Mac OS. They certainly have problems, but it's a different set of problems. Same thing applies if you find a vulnerability in Linux. It probably is not going to also be the same vulnerability on the Windows side. Well, this is an opportunity for us security people, because now we could have a web server that runs in different operating systems. And if half of our web servers are in Windows and half of our web servers are running on Linux, they are the same website with the same information. It's just underneath the surface is a different engine. So from the end user's perspective, they see the same thing, but from our processing perspective on the back end, we're supporting two different operating systems. There's obviously complexity involved in that to be able to support two separate operating systems, but there is also security in that, because if we happen to run into a dramatic problem with a Windows vulnerability and it takes down our Windows server, all of our Linux machines are still running. So we're not down completely. We're still up and running on the Linux side, or vice versa. Maybe we find an awful Linux vulnerability. These things have happened in the world. And we needed to patch that Linux machine, but the vulnerability associated with Linux doesn't affect Windows at all. So the reverse there, that our Linux now doesn't work and Windows is working properly. So one of the things that many security professionals will do is to have different types of platforms doing effectively the same thing. That way, if you do run into a Windows problem, Linux isn't affected. If you run into a Linux problem, Windows isn't affected. So that's the benefit of having that platform diversity. And in all 5 of these options, the only one that really describes platform diversity is to install both Linux and Windows web servers. Running cloud data centers in different countries, in this description, we didn't say that we were going to run different operating systems in different countries. We were just going to run whatever we're currently running in a different geographic location, which is geographic diversity, but it's not platform diversity. Obviously, that would help us if there was, at the data center that we were using, there was a power outage and the entire data center has no power or limited power. We'd at least have the same information running in a different geography. But that is not the same thing as platform diversity. With 13% of you said use a load balancer to connect identical servers. Again, they are identical servers on this load balancer. There is no diversity across those servers. So in this case, having the load balancer at least keeps you up and running if one of those Windows machines fails, but they're all Windows machines. So it doesn't provide any diversity at the platform level. 3% of you said build a set of processes to follow when the network is unavailable. And certainly having that set of ongoing manual processes that you could use will be important. If the network goes down, but you still need to process credit card transactions, you can do it over the phone. Let me take your number. Let me manually call in or punch in an automated system that credit card number, and we can at least continue to be up and running and selling things, even though we can't do interactive approvals for these credit cards. And then lastly, creating an active-active firewall configuration has nothing to do with platform diversity. That is the same systems, 2 identical systems that are running simultaneously. There's effectively no diversity there at the platform level at all. The only answer here that had any diversity at the platform level was the one right here in the middle, install Linux and Windows web servers. That is exactly the answer we were looking for. Hopefully that is the one that you chose, and about 70% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more question, shall we? This next question is one that is going to come from my practice exams book. This is a book I wrote really out of necessity. If you go look around the internet, you will find some awful practice exam questions. There are many, many more bad practice exam questions out there than good practice exam questions. What I found was a very lack of attention in most cases, because a lot of the practice exams I found were outdated. They were based on exam objectives from 2 or 3, even the last set of Security Plus exams. If CompTIA removes something from their exam objectives, they will not ask that on the new set of exams. Yet a lot of the questions I found on the internet were just old. They were just outdated. So that is not going to help you if you're studying for the latest set of Security Plus exams. I also found that a lot of the questions were just wrong. I think this whole advent of AI, as many of you know, the accuracy ratings of AI are under 70%. So if you were to have AI write all of these questions for you, you would end up with questions that were just completely wrong. They just don't work. So that is not, there are a lot of great ways to use AI, and having it create practice questions for you is not one of those. Very, very bad. Some of the questions I see online are not AI questions, and they're still bad. So what if you had a set of questions that were really written with the exam in mind and specific to how CompTIA asked the questions? That would be my practice exams book. This is a book available in this physical form. I also have it in digital form. And why don't we bring up a question from the book? Let's try one. This question is one that is in the second set of exams I have in this book, and it is question B87. It asks, when a person enters a data center facility, they must check in before they're allowed to move further into the building. People who are leaving must be formally checked out before they're able to exit the building. Which of the following would best facilitate this process? Is it an access control vestibule, an air gap, pressure sensors, or bollards? So you have the option there to choose. Obviously, we're going to use the same rules we have for other questions. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to be able to break down what the possible answers might be. And when you're looking at this book, you can see that the answers aren't on the page. You just don't see them. They're just not there. So whenever you start looking at what's on the page, you'll notice that you have to go to page 161 just to get a quick answer, page 251 to get the detailed answer. We're currently on page 158, which you can't see because my head's in the way there, but it says page 158. Well, instead of scrolling to get to the detailed answers, we can instead go to where it says the details and simply click on it. So that's what I'm going to do is click, and it takes you directly to that page. There's the question again. There's the answers, and it says the answer is A, access control vestibule, and it tells you why that is the right answer, which is great. If you got it right, that gives you a little more clarification and tells you you thought it was A, it is A, and here's why you were right. I guess it doesn't help very much if you were right. Where I think a description or an explanation really helps is when you get the answer wrong, because how am I supposed to learn where I went awry? So in my book, every incorrect answer is documented. Why was air gap not the right answer? Why was pressure sensors not the right answer? Why was bollards not the right answer? And I tell you why those are not the correct answer. And I will tell you, if you already have this book and you get a question right, don't just skip over the wrong answers, because on your exam, you might get a question about air gaps. You might get a question about pressure sensors. You might get a question about bollards. And one thing you'll notice about my practice exams book is practically 100% of the wrong answers are from the official exam objectives. So it's almost like every question really gives you at least 4 different topics to learn about. So make sure you read through those as well. Now, if you read the answer and you think, I have no idea what they're talking about with this question, I have a QR code that will take you to the video. This one comes from Objective 1.2 of the SY0-701 exam objectives. The video name is Physical Security. I also have this as a URL that you can visit, which is professormesser.com.link/701010206. I know it's 0, but that's just how it goes. You'll have to work through that in your own mind. You can also click on these. Since this is a digital version, it will take you to that video as well. And when we're done with this, I'm going to click the back button that's in my PDF reader. That back button takes me to where I was last. There we are, right there, that last question. I can go to the next question that's on my list if I'd like. So that is my practice exams book that's available on my website. Maybe this is something that will help you as you finish up your studies. This is a great way to test yourself. There are 3 90-question practice exams in this book, including performance-based questions, multiple choice questions, and the question types that you would commonly find on the Security Plus exam. There's also a little bit of a bonus if you buy this along with the course notes. So you might save a little bit of money. Find out more at professormesser.com/securitype. Also tell you, by the way, that every single one of the things we went through today have been told to us by CompTIA that these could potentially be on the exam. How do we know that? Well, they wrote it down for us. They gave us a set of exam objectives that tell us everything we need to know on this exam. All of the different security controls, such as technical, managerial, operational, and physical. That sounds familiar. And control types, such as preventive, deterrent, detective, corrective, compensating, and directive. So you've got a few that you could choose from there. And there's also more in this list. Boy, I kind of flew through those pretty quickly. Let's do it as a single page. So as we look at this, that's section 1.1, section 1.2. We have confidentiality, integrity, and availability as CIA. We have non-repudiation. We have authentication, authorization, and accounting, or AAA. And all of the other topics we need to know on fundamental security concepts. And we just keep going through the list. This is your checklist. Somebody in the chat room a couple minutes ago was saying, how do I know when I'm ready to take the exam? Well, you know, because you've gone through this entire list and you're able to explain to yourself or to someone else what the technical implication of an allow list or deny list happens to be. What is the technical implication of a restricted activity? What about downtime? What about service restart as it applies to the change management process? So all of this is in your exam objectives. It will tell you if you are ready to take this exam or not, because you can check off the things you know. You can circle the things you don't. And now when you're done going through this entire list, you'll know exactly what topics you need to work on. You'll know immediately if you're really ready to go in and take this exam, or maybe if you'd work a little bit more on the studying. This is another great place to go. Some folks in the chat room were even mentioning, I heard acronyms were big. Obviously, acronyms are everywhere in this exam. You need to know IAC, ICS, SCADA, RTOS. You need to know DMARC and DChem and SPF and NAC and EDR and XDR. There's a lot of abbreviations. We do this very well. In the back of the exam objectives, guess what? It's an acronym list. They'll tell you exactly the acronyms you need to know. I will warn you, though, they want to know more than just, do you know what AI stands for? They are going to use this as the acronym itself and how it is used in actual application. So when they have a question about the CSO, they're not going to explain to you or ask you, what does CSO stand for? They're going to say, you got a request from the CSO. What do you do with this? That type of thing. You have to know context as it's associated with those acronyms. That is all in the exam objectives, and they're free. The exam objectives are free. You don't need to pay anything for them. They're on the CompTIA website. If you want to download them, you can simply search for them in your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, or you can go to the link you see on the screen, professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these Security Plus study groups every month. Our next Security Plus study group is on May the 21st. That's the current scheduled Security Plus study group. Sometimes these schedules are subject to a bit of change. Sometimes they change pretty actively. And if you really want to know when the next live event is going to be, you can always go to our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, or use the events calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website. We also keep this list on our Discord. There's an events channel on our Discord, so you'll know exactly where those events will be, and they're all synced up. If any of these dates change, I change them in the calendar on our website and on the Discord events calendar immediately, so that it is always up to date with the latest information you need. And of course, we've got other study groups on the 6th and the 8th of May. In a couple of weeks, we have our A+ study groups, Network Plus study group on May 15th, and then the Security Plus study group on May 21st. So if you have plans, you want to put this in your calendar, you want to make sure you're here for the live event, it's all available at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, we're not done yet. Just the first hour. We have more to go through. Have a look at our after show. I'll be answering your questions. Stay exactly where you are. 10 seconds after we're done here, we'll turn the camera back on me and we'll go through the questions, see what type of questions you have for me. Of course, don't forget that we are available on social media. You can find us on Twitter, on Instagram. If you want your weekly Security Plus pop quiz question, that's where you'll find it. You also find it over on LinkedIn, professormesser.com/LinkedIn. You can also subscribe and get it in your email inbox. That's from the main page of the Professor Messer website. Don't forget about our YouTube channel. If you really want to help support us and you want to know when we put any new video out, you want to subscribe, go to professormesser.com/YouTube, something you can do for free, and it sure helps us quite a bit. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers and our exam hacks ebook at professormesser.com/vouchers, and our course notes, success bundle, and more is available on our website at professormesser.com/701SB. That is for our success bundle. Well, that brings us to the end of this study group. Hopefully you learned something with the Q&A we were doing, but we're not done yet. Stick around for the after show where I will answer your questions. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Okay, it's time for the after show. Let me bring up a picture of me so I can see myself. There we go. Now I can see myself. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the after show. This is the part of the live stream where I answer your questions about whatever you would like to ask, or at least I look through your questions and then decide if I'd like to answer them in any way that you would ask. The way that you could join us and submit those questions at any time is you use that same link that we have been using, professormesser.com/QA, and submit your question. So hopefully that will help you submit those. I have a big list on this side that I go through. You simply visit that same link, professormesser.com/QA, and I will filter through the questions that you have sent here to help understand what the options might be, what the different questions you might have, what other things you are putting in there. There are many questions I've seen go by in the chat room. The reason we have that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, is I just can't keep up with all of those questions going by in the chat room. So this is a great way that we can lock them in, and then I can simply go through the list and understand what options might be there. A lot to go through in this list. There are a lot of questions around the exam, but there's also a lot of questions around renewing your exam. In this first question, I would like to talk about this renewal process. This comes up quite a bit. This is from, again, one of my favorite people, Anonymous. Anonymous asks, besides this video, what are some other ways to get continuing education credits free or without paying a lot for them? So let's even back this up one step for those of you that may not be familiar with these continuing education units that you would collect. Let's talk about what this renewal process is like on the CompTIA side. And to help do this, I'm going to go over to the CompTIA.org website. And we're going to step through on this. You can see there's a lot of different options at the top of the screen. The one we're most interested in for renewal is the one that says continuing education. As many of you know, your exam, when you pass your exam, your certification is good for 3 years after you pass that exam. So you got 3 years that you're Security Plus certified. Sometime during that 3-year period, I was going to say at the end of the 3-year period, but really anywhere within that 3-year period, you could renew your certification for another 3 years. And you can do that through a number of different ways. CompTIA has tons of different ways to renew. And they talk about this renewal process in the step 2, choose your renewal path. You can renew with a single activity. That's a popular one. You can renew with multiple activities. That's often where these CEUs come in. And you can renew a lot of different ways that are sort of outside the scope of both of those. This one with the multiple activities is where we will get to. But just so you're aware, many people will use CertMaster CE. This is a computer-based training that CompTIA provides that can renew your certification in less than a day. So if you're at the very end of that 3-year period and you're thinking, everything expires tomorrow, what could I do now to renew my cert? I don't have time to study for another certification. I don't have time to collect CEUs. We just finished CertMaster CE. You can do it in a number of hours and you're done. You're now certified for 3 years. That's one that's probably one of the most popular. You could also get a higher level CompTIA certification. They've got a list of those certifications in this little box. So if you are Security Plus CE and you're thinking, how can I renew my Security Plus? Well, one of those is like the CompTIA CISA Plus and the CompTIA Pen Test Plus renew Pen Test, Security Plus, Network Plus, and A Plus. So you could take the CISA Plus or the Pen Test Plus, and both of those would potentially renew your Security Plus. But as I mentioned, this is one of these scenarios where maybe you're out of time. Maybe it expires tomorrow. Well, CertMaster CE might be the better choice for that, because for Security Plus, you can pay $205. You don't have to worry about collecting CEUs. You don't have to worry about paying annual maintenance fees. You just pay one amount and you take this continuing education. They say it takes 8 to 10 hours, depending on your knowledge. Some people say it takes even less than that. And you can do that and you're done. It's renewed. You submit it once you finish and that's it. You don't have to do anything else. So it's a great way to go through the process of renewing without having to collect CEUs. You don't have to collect points. You don't have to count anything. It's very, very simple, an easy way to go through that. There's other ways as well. You could take a third-party exam, this single exam, non-CompTIA IT certifications. So if you're renewing Security Plus, you can go through and take any of these certifications, or maybe you already have taken one of these certifications in the last 3 years. You may not even realize that you have everything you need to renew your Security Plus. So another way that you can renew without going down a particular path or worry that you have to stick on this rail that CompTIA has provided to you, there's a lot of different ways to renew, a lot of different aspects of renewal that you will run into. And indeed, in this case, to get CE credits free or without paying a lot for them, let's figure out what other ways we could collect CEUs. I'm going to go back to that first page of certifications, and we'll go to the one where we are not working with a single way to renew. We are renewing with multiple activities. Let's click that. And it says that we could do a lot of different things. We could get CompTIA certs, non-CompTIA certs, training and higher education, IT industry participation. We can publish, or we could have work experience. For example, from the training and higher education, you can complete a training course, attend a live webinar, attend a conference, complete a college course, complete an American Council on Education course, and you can see they are all worth different number of CEUs depending on what certification that you have. And this is only one category. This is the live webinar category that we're talking about right here. And if you're Security Plus certified, you can collect 10 of those webinar category CEUs. But as you already know, you need 50 CEUs to be able to renew your Security Plus. That gets you 1/5 of the way. So you may want to look at some of these other methods. Maybe a good one was IT industry participation. Maybe you teach, maybe you create instructional materials, maybe you participate as a subject matter expert in a CompTIA exam development workshop. There are also publishing, work experience, and other ways to go about collecting CEUs. Everybody may have a different set of things that they've done or a different set of daily part of their job that they don't even realize fits into the world of CEUs. So it may be that some of the things you have already done can be used to renew your certification. Might be something to think about. If you would like to submit a question for us to consider, you can use the link on your screen. Go to professormester.com/QA and submit your question. Let's keep going through this list and understand the differences. I think this is a pretty good one. We were talking earlier in the study group about security controls. And a lot of the questions I get about that very first presentation of the 701 course is that one security control is put into this box, but wouldn't that security control really fit into a different box? And that's what DB asks, which is, why are standard operating procedures classified as managerial controls and not an operational control? Standard operating procedures are implemented by people and are used day to day. Isn't that operational? Similarly, why are our awareness programs classified as operational and not managerial? Well, DB brings up a good point, because you could take a number of these different security controls and put them into different categories. As I mentioned in the video, and it's often missed, I think, I did put it in text and I say it so that everybody can find it, but it goes by so fast, is that a security control is not exclusive to a particular category. That means that a single security control can fit in multiple categories. So when you say, why is it categorized as managerial and not operational? My response to that is, why aren't you putting it in both? Because that's really what you can do with these security controls. It can be both a managerial control and an operational control. And depending on how it's implemented, it could even be a technical control. It could be a directive control. So there's different security methods, different types of security controls you can have, and you can put them into whatever category they fit. They are not designed to fit into a single category. They are designed to fit into all the categories that might apply for their particular use in that context. So in that particular case, and you'll notice, by the way, that in our video, in the earlier part of the study group, we use security controls that very specifically fit into one of those categories. I made it very clear so that there would not be any of those controls that might fit into multiples of those. So that's, in my particular case, it's written so that you can't confuse that. Only one of them fits into a particular slot. In the world of total numbers of every security control in the world, obviously those security controls could absolutely fit into different categories if it's not something that's on a little question that I wrote at the beginning of the study group, just so you are familiar with what those differences might be. Let's keep going through our list of questions that you have submitted. We have lots in this list. This is a question that's common, and you may have even gotten this with your any other security or networking certification that you've taken. This is from Matt. Matt asks, hello, Professor Messer and team. I just passed the A+ Core 1 and Core 2 exams. Congratulations. Matt is now A+ certified. Thanks for all the resources y'all provide. Welcome, Matt, to the South. Thank you. I'm looking to get my Security Plus and Network Plus next, but which one should I tackle first? Is it a branching path sort of thing? Is it better to do one first than the other? Which one do you choose? And I thank you for asking me, because I get to give my standard answer for this, which is, I don't know. It really depends on you. And that's why I often tell folks, I get this question a lot of different ways. I just passed the certification. Which one should I do next? I just got out of school and got my degree. What certification should I do first? Or what certification would be best if eventually I want to do this particular job? So I kind of get this question a lot of different ways. It's a great question, but it's a question that is written in the wrong direction. It's sort of flipped, because the thing that determines what you are doing with your certification path, when you're working on a lot of different parts of your career, you're working on a professional path, you may be working on a formal education, you might be working on getting a particular set of professional experiences, and you may be working on a number of different IT certifications. There's never just any one thing that is what you have to do to get that job. It's always a mixture of things. But if we are just looking at the certification part of this, we're not worrying about our professional career type of operations that we're doing, or jobs that we've had. We're not really talking about our formal education right now. Let's just talk about IT certifications. The best IT certification that you should take is the one that employers would like you to have. That's a very broad statement, I realize, and it doesn't apply 100% of the time, but it applies 99% of the time. If we're assuming in this case that we're working on these IT certifications, these industry certs, if we're working on them, we are probably doing this so that we can get a job or get a better job. Let's just go with that particular motivation at this time. And when we have that type of motivation, if we want to decide, well, what do I do first? What do I do next? What do I do after that? We need to not look at me. I don't know. I don't know what's going to work along your path, and I don't know what employers are looking for, and I don't know what you want to do with your career. Now, if we sat down, we had some coffee, we had a soda, we talked for a while, we tried to figure out what direction you wanted to move in, we talked about what technologies interested you, we talked about where you lived in the world, and we talked about what businesses were close to where you lived, well, then we can come up with some ideas. But that's a lot of talking. There's a lot of analysis that goes on, and I want to give you the skills to perform that analysis yourself. There's a video that is in the YouTube video description of this video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's a 30-minute video. It is absolutely up to date with the latest things. And I go through each one of these elements that you will need. You'll need a formal education. You'll need some IT certifications. You'll need some type of practical experience, and you'll need to know someone who works there. That is the best possible scenario. And I take each one of those elements and we really do a deep dive in every single one of them. One of the ones that are on that list is IT certifications. And I talk about how can we really make a good decision about what best IT certification would be for us. And I talk about the process that I would go through. I would sit down with a spreadsheet. I would find every IT position in my geographical area that I really feel I qualify for. So I wouldn't go after the SQL administrator jobs. I wouldn't go after the security analyst jobs if I was just starting out in the industry, because those jobs are outside my level of expertise. They are looking for experience that I do not have. But if there's a job that is a network operations center call manager, or someone who's help desk in that scenario, just a generic company help desk. Maybe it's working as triage in a security operations center or a SOC. These are true entry-level positions into IT. Each one of those will have a different set of requirements, and different employers have different requirements. Some employers want you to be very heavy on the certification side. Some employers don't care. And of course, all of this fits into the formula that you are creating, the documentation that you're building out in your spreadsheet. So you'll be able to put in here's a job. It's for a help desk position at an insurance company. They want this level of formal education. They want these particular industry certifications. They want an understanding or expertise in these particular topics. And I don't know anybody who works there. So there's our first job that we can put in our list. And let's find 10 of those. Let's find 20 of those in our area. And let's make this spreadsheet. Once we built out our own little database of every open position that we could possibly qualify for in our area, what are they looking for? And you may be able to find that there is a very specific direction that you're pointed in. For example, if you live in the Washington, D.C. area in the United States, you will notice that a large number of those positions tend to focus on the Security Plus exam and certification. So they want you to be Security Plus certified. They might not even mention Network Plus or A Plus. If you are in Minneapolis, you may find that there is more A Plus that's being asked of you. If you live in Texas, maybe Network Plus is what they are looking for. It really depends on what employers want you to do. And that will have an effect on what direction you go in. Now, you may find, and I see this quite a bit, is people come to my site and they say, but I'm more interested in security, so I'm going to go get Security Plus. Okay, well, that is a good reason to get Security Plus at a personal level, but does it help your career? And that's the real question. It's interesting. I like to do it. I like the topics. It's something that someday I would like to be involved in IT security. But as we all know, there's not a lot of get your foot in the door jobs associated with IT security. Most of those jobs in IT security expect you to already have experience in operating systems and networks and at least some level of expertise in security. And that when you're just out of school or you're just getting started in the industry, that's one of those cases where you're not going to have that. So you're going to want to focus instead on what do employers want you to have. And hopefully you can find a good love connection there where the employers want you to have this cert. That'd be a good one to do. Let's do that certification, or let's make sure we have that certification. So you may find places where it does sync up pretty well. But there may be times when you look at the list and everybody wants Security Plus and you think, but I didn't want to go get Security Plus. I wanted to do this. Well, for the purposes of getting that first job, maybe you should go do what the employer wants you to do. Then once you get the job, then it becomes much easier to move up either within the same organization or into a different organization. So that's why I tell people all the time, don't worry so much about that first set of certs. Get whatever employers want you to get. Then once you have that, now you can go a different direction and you can start sort of leaning a bit. I often say that the pathway for IT, it's not just a single rail that you would get on and you have to do this first and this second and this third and this fourth. That's not the way IT generally works. Usually it's a big river and you get into the river and you're basically going one direction. Sometimes you can kind of lean that boat a direction. Maybe you want to do more networking. Let's lean the boat a little bit. Maybe we'd like to do more cloud-based technologies. Well, we'll lean the boat over in this direction, and you can start to direct a little bit once you get into the river. But if you're sitting on the bank and you just got your boat and there's no water under the boat, you should probably start with getting your boat in the river first. Then we can deal with what direction is this boat going. We need the paychecks coming in first. Then we can worry about where we go next on this journey. So that's the important part. Get in the river. Don't worry about what you're doing on the bank. Find out, hey, what do I need to do to get this boat in the river? Oh, you need a Security Plus. All right, let's get a Security Plus so I can get this boat in here and we get moving and get through that particular line of that wall that's up that we need to get over. That is the important thing out there as we start working through all of these concerns and trying to figure out what direction we go. Make sure you are familiar with that. So that's why I always answer the question that was asked, what should I do next? I always answer with, I don't know, but you do, or you can. And I try to turn the question around and put the mirror pointing the other direction, because I can't answer that for you with any type of accuracy. You have to answer it, but it's probably going to take a little bit of research for you to really come up with a very good answer. And what's interesting, though, once you finish that process, you now know everything there is to know about the industry in your particular area. Now you'll know every open position. And if you were to expand that out, I talk in my video about what about going and talking to people who are already in these positions? Have you been to a Microsoft user group? Have you been to a security industry group? Maybe a Palo Alto Networks user group? Maybe a Cisco user group? There's lots of great user groups out there. That's where you meet people who already have these jobs. These are also people who are hiring for these jobs. And if you know them, that's another great check mark when you're applying to these positions. So remember, it's not just about one thing. It's about many things and using them all together. Let's now shift gears to another question and other things that we might have. We got a lot that we are working through in this list. So other people, we've talked a little bit about getting your job or getting your certification so you can get that first job. Now let's look 3 years from now. Let's say that you're working in the DC area, or you're working in an area with a lot of emphasis in security, and now you've earned your Security Plus certification, you've gotten that job, you've gotten in the door. It may not specifically be an IT security job, but at least the Security Plus certification got you there. But now 3 years have gone by, and Anonymous asks, is it worth recertifying the Security Plus, or is it more of a stepping stone to other certifications? This is another one that I can't answer for you. I'm getting a lot of great answers from me today, aren't you? Which is, I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm not able to answer that. So this is one where it really depends on where you are in your career. You may be working with a managed service provider that requires contractually to have a certain number of certified people on staff, and they may even specify which certifications you must have. And that's by the way, not very unusual. So you may find that you are required to maintain your Security Plus and recertify it. Now, fortunately, it's very easy to recertify a certification. You don't have to take the exam again. You might already have done things in the last 3 years that you could use as CEUs. And as I've already mentioned, you could even use the CertMaster CE to renew your certification in less than a day. So that may be very easy to make the decision. So it's not really about can you do it? It's really about what value does the Security Plus provide to you. Now, you may have earned your Security Plus 3 years ago. You may have gotten that entry-level position. You may have worked your way through the networking team, and you might have even stumbled into an IT security position in your particular company. And if that happens, they may not care that you have a Security Plus, but they might want you to get Palo Alto Networks certified. So there's always another certification that you're working on in this industry. You never stop learning in IT. It's not like you'll finish your A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, and you'll never do a certification again. Oh, no. You will be working on certifications your entire IT career. I probably have 20 or 30 different certs that I've gathered through the years in IT, at least one a year that we were gathering, sometimes more than one a year, just to make that happen. So you need to decide, is the Security Plus still valuable to you? Obviously, Security Plus is valuable in certain scenarios, but is it still valuable to you? Now, the certifications that I've had through the years, I've had Security Plus, A+, Network Plus, and I have to always decide, do I want to renew that? Do I not want to renew it? Is it useful for me to renew? Is it not useful for me to renew? You have to decide. And so it can be a stepping stone to other certs. It can be a way to prove to people that you are certified. And it might be something you just like to keep on your resume, especially if you can easily renew the certification. You may not even know if the Security Plus is something that you might want to use over the next 3 years, but you might think that you might want to use it. That might be enough for you to renew. And that's probably a good idea, because if you don't renew and it expires, you can't simply unexpire it. There's no way to go back at that point. There's no way to renew it at that point. Once it is expired, you are done. You have to take the exam again to become renewed. You don't want to do that. There's so many much more easy ways to renew your certification than taking the exam again. So I would absolutely recommend that you look at how you are using these certifications, and you use that as the determination on whether it's valuable or not to renew that cert. You may find ways to renew a bunch of certs that you have all at the same time, and you just keep them another 3 years. Completely up to you. And work through those pieces of it. Let's talk about the exam itself, and the metrics on the exam and the information you need to know about the exam. Mohammed asks, are all questions on the Security Plus exam, whether multiple choice or performance-based, worth the same number of points? Does each question count as 1 point, and you just have to count them up until they reach a certain point, or is it different? Well, CompTIA has never publicly stated how they grade their exams, and I really don't think CompTIA is going to tell us anything about how they grade their exams. There's very little we know about the exam grading process. One thing that we have figured out, though, is that each question on the exam is worth a different number of points. That's really all we know. It's worth a different number of points. So one question might be worth 1 point. Another question might be worth 1,000,000 points. We don't know. CompTIA doesn't tell us. Now, probably isn't 1,000,000, because we know that you have to score 750 points on a scale from 100 to 900. So when you get into that scenario, well, now we have to kind of think about how this works. People have even often said, well, we know the performance-based questions are worth more than the multiple choice. And I have to mention, we actually don't know that. There's no way to know that, in fact. In fact, it may be that the performance-based questions are worth very little, and they're worth almost nothing when you compare it to the multiple choice questions. Or maybe the performance-based questions are worth a lot more than most of the multiple choice questions, because we know each question's worth a different number of points. There's no way to really compare and contrast them at that level. But CompTIA doesn't tell us how much these are worth. There have been reports made to us from people that said, I took the exam, I skipped over the performance-based questions at the beginning, I went through all the multiple choice questions, and just as I was coming back to start the performance-based questions, the clock ran out of time. And I never got a chance to put anything in any of the answers of any performance-based question. And they still passed. So that tends to get rid of at least the theory that some may have that say that you have to pass performance-based questions or the rest of the exam is worthless. Well, that's clearly not the case, because we have at least had one, perhaps even other reports of this, where people have just not done well on performance-based questions or not answered any of them and still passed the exam. But how would you reverse engineer that after the fact? You can't. CompTIA doesn't give you any way to unpack or decipher how they graded the exam. They don't tell you what questions you got right and what questions you got wrong. They don't tell you how much those questions were worth. There's no way to know. And you will never know. You have to now internalize that one a little bit. You will never know how your exam was graded. So I will be very clear in telling you what I always tell folks about this issue. Don't try to think about it. Don't try to reverse engineer it. Don't try to figure out the algorithm they use, because you will be wrong, because there's no way to confirm it. And it may be that you spend so much time trying to figure out the formula that you sort of forget that you need to answer the questions right. So don't spend your time, or in this case, waste your time trying to figure out how the exam is graded, because you will never know. What you need to spend your time on is just getting the questions right and the final score will take care of itself. That's all you can do. And by the way, this is not something specific to CompTIA. This is every IT industry exam. So whether you're taking a Cisco exam, a Microsoft exam, an AWS exam, it doesn't matter. They all work in a similar way. You never really know how they're graded. You just have to get as much right as you can. And then the final score takes care of itself. So that's my recommendation to you as well. Don't worry about the making of the sausage. Just worry about the end product. And that way you're focusing on the right things. You're focusing on the topics themselves, not how the topics are graded. Ultimately, we're never going to know either. Now, I'll tell you, I hate never knowing. That's one of those where it's a mystery of the universe. We're never going to know. We will go to our grave never knowing how they graded this exam. We just sort of have to figure that out, take it, and keep going with it. More questions. We'll keep going through this list and talk about what the different options are for making these happen. Very quickly, there's some of the questions I got that are sort of shotgun questions. Somebody in the questions, Andrew in the questions, was asking about renewing with the CEU option. If you are watching this video on a replay, you can still submit the CEU request at any time. This could be a year ago. You're watching this a year after I recorded it, 2 years after I recorded it. As long as it fits your requirements for CEU, you can absolutely submit a request. If you are watching this on demand, CompTIA has sometimes changed their requirements for CEUs. They require a document from me that says you were here. And that's why you sending in the super secret code words and me sending you an email that has been digitally signed by me confirms that you really were here for that 1 hour webinar category. So you can absolutely do this in the past. You can watch it on demand. You can watch 5 minutes at a time. And when you finally get the whole thing watched, you can submit that CEU email and I will send you back that email that has been digitally signed. So you got options. Let's keep going through the list of questions that you have as we're approaching the top of the hour. And we'll keep going down this list. We got a lot here to go through. A lot of great questions, by the way. Thank you so much also for submitting these questions. Thank you just for being here in the after show, for that matter. And we'll keep going down this list and seeing what options we have. Let's see if I can... a lot of other questions. We sort of duplicated a number of questions. We've already talked about CEU. We've already talked about performance-based questions. There were a lot of questions about the grading of performance-based questions. I think we've covered that at this point. Let's go through kind of a practical way of studying for this exam. This is from Emmanuel, who says, "Hi, Professor. Do you think it's realistic to pass the Security Plus exam with 4 weeks of study? My test is scheduled for May 18th. I've been studying your material for about a week now. Do you think that's enough time to be prepared and pass the exam?" So let's talk about passing the exam and timeframes and what the strategy might be and where most people focus. The Security Plus certification, on average, takes most people 2 to 3 months of study before they are ready to take their certification exam. That is a very broad average, 2 to 3 months. There's not a lot of detail there, and I'm not really narrowing it down. And it's effectively a non-scientific number. It's a number that I've come up with just sort of talking to folks over a number of years and saying, well, how long did you study? How long did you study? And sort of putting that into my own little database. And on average, it's about 2 to 3 months. The reason there's so much of a broad range there, our standard deviation is quite big on that particular statistic, is because everybody comes into this exam with a different set of knowledge. If I was to come into Security Plus for the first time after being in the industry, working as a next generation firewall engineer, implementing these firewalls, doing firewall migrations, setting up IPsec tunnels, integrating with Active Directory, creating security policies in the firewall itself, setting it up in redundant configurations, integrating with existing switches and routing protocols. There's a lot involved there. So if I was to go into the Security Plus exam at that point in my career, I could probably study for a week and take the exam and pass it because I've already got this foundational knowledge of security that I had accumulated over an entire set of different career positions that I've had. So for the last 20 years has sort of built up to that point. Well, I already have a lot of knowledge on hashing and salting and encryption and IPsec and multi-factor authentication and implementation of this and configuration of that. And I already know it. But what I really need to do is just go through the exam objectives. Yep. Nope, need to study that one a little more. Yep. Okay, we're good. So about a week, I could go take that exam and I could pass it. I feel comfortable in saying that. But somebody who just got out of school, they don't have any knowledge in security, they might need 3 months to sit down with those topics and really understand what's being asked. Somebody like me who's coming from zero knowledge, I like to really understand it. I like to get into the theory crafting of these topics. I like to really break them apart and understand how they work. So it might take me 4 to 6 months before I take this exam. That's normal for me. There have been people that come to my site and said, I need to take the Security Plus exam and I need to do it in 2 weeks. They spend their time, they study for 2 weeks, they walk in, they pass their exam and they're done. Very rarely are they really starting from ground zero, however. So this will be different for everyone. Now, in Emmanuel, in your case, you mentioned that your test is scheduled for May 18th. Sometimes these testing dates are one that have been mandated to us by our employer. We have to pass it by May 18th. We don't have any choice. We can't push that date. But just so you are aware, and everybody else who's listening, is that when you book your exam date, you can change it. I think it's 24 hours in advance. You can log in online and change the date. I will tell you when you make that change, get plenty of screenshots, confirm the change. In fact, what I commonly do, and I will recommend you really do this because I've gotten email after email after email about this issue, is people will go in to make the change. They will change the date of their exam. They will go away. They'll come back on the day of their exam and it says, well, you missed it. It was a week ago when it was originally scheduled. Like, it's not a week ago. I changed the date, but it didn't take. So for whatever reason in the system that is being used, it is either not obvious that we are locking in a date or it's not obvious that the date has not been verified. So I will always tell you when you are changing your date of this exam, change the date online, log out, count to 10, log back in, see if it really changed. And make sure you get screenshots of those things because there have been so many people sending me messages that say, I changed the date and then when I went to take it, it never took the change. And I don't know I haven't done any research into the process they use for modifying the dates on these exams to understand where the problem is. But there's clearly a problem somewhere. So I'm just telling you to be very diligent in making those changes, just so you are aware of that. Now, in many cases, you can open a ticket with the folks at CompTIA and say, something didn't take right because here's what happened. And they usually are very accommodating and they will make it so that, okay, we'll get your rescheduled here. You can use the voucher again, go schedule a new date. They oftentimes will work with you to make that happen. That's not 100% of the time, but they have been very good so far on that. So that's why I tell people you just don't know how long it's going to take you. So one of the things you might do is go to your exam objectives. We have those. So we were looking at these earlier. Go to your exam objectives and go to the first set. Like start with section 1.1, compare and contrast various types of security controls. Go through my video on these control categories and the control types. Understand what the differences might be. Understand where you might want to put these things. Once you finish that, go to section 1.2. Go through all of these topics in section 1.2. And then you've now gone through 2 different sections. Now you can take a step back and say, how long did that take? Did that take a week? Did it take a day? And now you can start to decide, is this going to take a long time? Is it not? You might even want to make a spreadsheet of all of these topics and start checking them off. There's lots of different ways. Many people study in different ways. There's different strategies that work best for different folks. So I'll tell you, from my perspective, you probably really, really want to deal with those exam objectives. If you look at an objective, if you can tell yourself or you can tell somebody else what that objective is about. You can probably check it off your list. Say, this is how we use this. This is how this is implemented. This is why we would want to use this on our network. This is how this technology makes our network more secure. You can do that. You can check that one off your list. So I don't have a solid question for you on how long will this take. Can I do it by May 18th? I don't know. It really depends on how much time you study, how well you are with the studying process, the different topics you've already accumulated through the years, and what the random questions on your exam happen to be. If they all come up to be topics that you really know, you'll do quite well. So there is a way, there's a mathematical formula, I'm sure. What if we only studied half of the exam objectives, but what if that's the half that came up on our exam? Well, then 100% of the exam. So I don't recommend doing it that way. That's probably a really bad idea, but certainly something you should think about when you're planning the process, and you may be able to push that date unless it's locked in for you. And you can push that date for free. You can keep pushing it as long as you want. You just need to have 24 hours of time, and you can keep pushing it. So you don't lose a voucher by doing that. You don't lose your money you've invested in taking this exam, but you must take the exam by the expiration date of your voucher. So you can keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, but you can't keep pushing it forever. Your voucher has an expiration date associated with it. It is commonly a year from when you bought that voucher. So you have to finish taking your exam before that year is up. It's not just a voucher expiration date, it's an exam expiration date as well. So make sure you take it in that time frame, and you don't want to miss it. I recently had somebody send me an email that said, I bought my voucher a year and a half ago. Stuff happened in my life. I wasn't able to take the exam. It's now, the voucher has been expired for 6 months. What can I do? There's not much you can do. I hate giving the bad news at that point. There's not much you can do. The voucher expired. My recommendation was to send CompTIA a message, open a ticket with them, and say, these things happened. I wasn't able to do something. Is there anything you can do to help me out? And maybe they were. I never got the end of that story to know exactly what was going to happen with that. But that's why I often tell people, don't buy the voucher until you're really ready to take the exam, because that's the time that 1 year starts. If you know it's going to take 6 months to study, don't buy your voucher at the beginning of that 6-month study period. Buy your voucher once you're done with the studying, so that you now have another year of eligibility in that list, because you really never know what's going to happen. Life is weird. You just never know where those things are going. So that's why it's the case. I know we're at the top of the hour. I'd like to get a couple more questions in and see if we can keep going through this list. A lot of people were talking to me, and I have had a couple of questions come in recently about the Security Plus exam. I'm trying to find the best place to go for you. And I think I do know where the best place to go for this might be. On the CompTIA website, not on the CompTIA website. Let's go to the Professor Messer website, because why wouldn't you? We're going to look at Security Plus. I'm going to go to my Security Plus Start Here options, just to make sure that the information I'm looking for is in this list. I think I have it here somewhere. One moment, please. While I click around, I need to put what I'm looking for in a much clearer place than it already is. If you go to the CompTIA website, there is information about the current Security Plus exam, and when they have a very broad overview of when they expect that exam to be available. But some of you have kind of already seen this on the live stream earlier, is that the current version of the Security Plus exam is the SY0-701. It was released on November 7th of 2023, which means it does not retire until May 2027. So right now, for those of you familiar on the A+ certification side, you know that A+ is currently in that transition period where you could take either the exam that's been around for 3 years, or you could take an exam that's been out less than a month. And there's this 6-month overlap period that we're currently just started. So for the next 6 months, you could take either of those. But at the end of 6 months, the 1100 series exams retire. You can't take those exams anymore. You can only take the newer version. A similar thing will happen with Security Plus, but the 701 exam doesn't retire until what we are estimating to be May of 2027. So I think a lot of people are seeing the A Plus is changing. There's all this new stuff with A Plus, A Plus, A Plus, A Plus. Oh, I wonder if Security Plus is changing as well. It is not. Thankfully, CompTIA does not do all of these at the same time. Thankfully. So you do not have to worry that CompTIA is changing the Security Plus. Everything you're studying is not going to be valid. Nope. If you are studying for your Security Plus right now, as we sit here at the end of April 2025, you have plenty of time to study and pass your Security Plus exam with the 701 version of the exam objectives. Now, the reason I mention why it's so important to know that it's the 701, you don't want to study from the 601 study materials. The 601 study materials do not have the same information as the 701. In fact, they're quite different. So I'm going to go to a section of my website for the 701. I have a lot to go through here on this version of the exam. I have some articles for Security Plus that I've written. And specifically, it's an article that talks about the differences. Well, let's get the right screen. Here it is. The differences between the 601 and the 701. So in this list, I have for you, here's where the 601 was. Back in 2020, it was released. It retired on July of 2024. On November 7th, 2023, the 701 was released, and it's good until May of 2027 or so. It's an estimated retirement date. You've got plenty of time to work through those pieces. Now, if you are coming from the 601 side and you're wondering, what are the differences in this exam versus a different one? Well, here it is. This is the size of the 601 exam on the left. This is the size of the 701 exam on the right. You can see these are very different exams, not only in size, but in content. The 601 had over 1,000 objectives. The 701 has 662. It's 36% smaller. And you can see this circle is 36% smaller than this bigger circle. Notice also that about half of the content of the 601 is on the 701. That also means that half of the content of the 701 is brand new, that is not covered in the 601. And that's why I tell people, if you're studying materials written for the 601, you're studying a lot of this yellow information that will never appear on your exam. So that's why I think it is so important to focus your efforts on getting the right information for the right exam version. Make sure all of your study materials are specifically written for the 701, the 701 exam, SY0-701. That is an important consideration, and it is one that will help you know that you're studying the right materials. And when you walk in, you'll be asked the right questions. You'll know the answer to these questions because you've been studying from that specific set of exam objectives. So important when you are planning your studies. Make sure all of your study materials match the version of the exam that you are planning to take. So important. It is another consideration whenever you start getting into these exams and what is important to know for these exams. I see people all the time doing this mismatch where they will study for the wrong exam version, go in and take the exam and do very poorly. And when they come out, they say, I was studying this and this. I had a screen full of port numbers that I was studying. Well, there's no port numbers on the exam objectives. Now, obviously, there are some port numbers you need to know for any of these exams, but I think probably the top 5 port numbers is it. Certainly not many. And a good example of this. So in the chat room, Otter says, I have my 601 book. If I study the 601 book, am I going to pass my exam? Let's go back to our document here. So you got a 601 book that you've been studying from. I'm going to make this so we can actually read it on here. So you got this 601 book that you've been studying. Let me actually do this so I can talk to you when we do this. Here's a 601 book right here. And here's the 701 exam objective. So if you have a 601 book, about 70% of the book will not be covered on the exam that you take. 70% of the exam does not appear on the 701 of the 601 book. My recommendation is if you have a book that is for the 601, throw it away, put it away. I hate throwing away books. There's something of value in there, but not for the exam. But do not use it as an exam study guide. Get a book specifically written for the 701 exam, and then you'll know you're studying exactly the right content. If you study a 601 book and you go to take the 701 exam, just considering the objectives, the best score you could possibly get on your Security Plus exam is a 50%. By the way, not passing. That's not a passing score. Half of the right answers is not a good exam grade. You will not pass your exam. And that's why. That's why I tell people, do not use your big yellow 601 book to study for your green and blue 701 exam. That's pretty important. So that is incredibly important when you go in to take this exam. There will be people on the internet who have fought with me over this. No, they're practically the same because there's a blog article from somewhere that says they're pretty much the same. Well, did you count them? Did you count the objectives on both sides? Did you compare the 601 objectives to see what was dropped? Did you compare the 701 objectives to see what was added? Because I did. It took hours of analysis, a couple of spreadsheets, lots of information, had to write some formulas, took a little bit to put this together. But these are pretty accurate. I mean, we can argue that maybe some of the numbers, maybe that's 700 and this one is 328. We can argue at that level, but that means they're effectively the same numbers. I think this tells a story. And the story is, do not use a 601 book if you're planning to go take the 701 exam. You will be in big trouble when you sit down, and your exam grade will not be very good. Don't put yourself in that position. We want you to walk into that exam and know everything you need to know to pass it, be able to have the knowledge to answer any of the questions you're presented with, regardless the format they use to present them with you. You might have multiple choice. You might have pick all that apply. You might have performance-based questions that are drag and drop. You might have to answer questions about the inner workings of how an organization works with security topics. Those are all things that are in your exam objectives. And that's why it's so important to follow those objectives. That's exactly why my course follows the objectives to the letter. You'll notice that all of my videos are numbered with the exact same numbers that we use in the official exam objectives, and that's why. So you can always find exactly what you're looking for, go directly to those topics, and you'll notice that every topic in the exam objective is also covered in the videos because I use the exam objectives as the same checklist when I go through all of those. So that's an important consideration as well. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And if you are someone who's planning to take that exam, those objectives will tell you if you're really ready. So maybe that's what you do. If somebody has been studying from a 601 book, hand them the 701 objectives. How many of these can you check? Will be about 50% if they know everything they need to know. You do not want to be at 50% for your exam. That would be a very bad idea. Well, we're well past the top of the hour. That's probably a good place to stop for this particular session. It has been such a great live stream today. Thank you so much for being here in that first hour and answering questions with me. You guys did really well on most of those questions. Well done. And thank you for your questions in the second hour as well. We have so many questions that you send us every time we do one of these live streams. You always seem to know where the different topics are that we all need to know about. And so it not just helped you, it helped a lot of people just by going through the questions that you have submitted. We, of course, do one of these live streams for Security Plus every month, and we do other live streams as well. If you'd like to know when the next live stream is going to be, simply visit our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. Thanks for joining us this time. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.